My name is Eliza. This is my family betrayal and revenge story. I found my long-lost sister through social media. Finally, we were whole again. But what she remembered, and what I discovered next, shattered everything I thought I knew about our family. Please subscribe for weekly exciting family betrayal and revenge stories. Like our videos, it matters a lot to us. Welcome back to the story. They say social media connects the world, but I never imagined it would unravel mine. It started on a random Tuesday afternoon. I was bored at work, stuck behind the counter at a small detail shop in Phoenix, scrolling through Instagram like it was my full-time job. And that's when I saw her. Her profile popped up under people you may know. At first, I thought it was a glitch, a filtered version of me in another life. Same almond-shaped green eyes. Same awkward smirk. Even the same dimple on the right cheek. But her name, Samantha Valles, my last name. I clicked on the profile. My hands trembled as I scrolled. She lived in Flagstaff. Worked as a tattoo artist. Had over 6,000 followers. Her bio was short but haunting, finally living my truth. No more secrets. My stomach flipped. I zoomed in on a photo of her laughing with a friend. Her nose was slightly crooked, just like mine. She had the same beauty mark above her eyebrow. I felt dizzy. Could she be? I opened the messages and typed. Hi. I know this is weird. But did you ever live in Phoenix? Or, do you know a woman named Dana Valles? I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the send button. Then I tapped it and waited. 10 minutes later, she replied, "You're not crazy. I've been trying to find you too." We stayed up all night texting. She told me that she'd always known she was adopted, but only recently discovered her real last name through court records. When she searched Valles as Phoenix, my old high school photo popped up on Facebook. She said she stared at it for an hour before believing it. That next weekend, we met in person. A little cafe on Roosevelt Row. I walked in early, palms sweaty, heartbeat racing, then she walked in. And time just stopped. Seeing her was like looking in a mirror with 10 years of separation layered between us. We just stood there. No words. No awkward small talk. Just raw, stunned silence, and then, tears. I hadn't even known she existed. And suddenly, I couldn't imagine how I'd gone my whole life without her. We spent hours talking. She told me about her life, about growing up in California with distant relatives who never let her ask questions. About how she'd always had this gnawing feeling that something was missing. That she wasn't where she belonged, and then she asked the question I'd been dreading: why didn't Mom ever look for me? I forced a smile. Lied through my teeth. She thought you were gone. Because that's what I'd always been told, that my sister died in a car accident when she was 3 years old. A tragedy no one talked about. Just a photo in a dusty album and the occasional sad glance from my mom when we passed certain streets, but now I knew. Samantha was never in a car crash. She was standing right in front of me. Very much alive, and everything I thought I knew about my family had just turned into smoke. The Arizona sun was already melting the sidewalks by the time I parked downtown. My heart was a hammer in my chest. Every step toward the cafe felt like walking into a dream, or a trap. I stood outside the window for a second, staring in, and there she was, Samantha. She looked nervous too, tapping her cup, eyes darting toward the door. I walked in slowly, trying to remember how to breathe. When our eyes met, we just froze. Neither of us moved. Neither of us smiled at first. It was like time slowed, giving our hearts a chance to catch up to what our eyes were seeing. Then she stood up. I don't know who reached out first, but suddenly we were hugging like we'd done it 1,000 times before. Like our bodies remembered something our minds had been denied for decades. It was warm. Familiar. Heartbreaking. We sat down, still staring at each other in disbelief. "You look just like Mom," she said, her voice shaky but soft. "You look like me," I whispered. She laughed nervously, wiping a tear. I kept wondering if I was crazy. If this was all some coincidence. I thought the same thing. Until I saw your name. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing at the same time. She told me about the couple who raised her, distant relatives on her father's side. Cold people. They fed me and clothed me, she said. But love? That wasn't part of the deal. Her voice cracked as she went on. They told me my mother didn't want me. That she gave up custody and disappeared. I thought she left me behind like trash. My chest tightened. I shook my head slowly. That's not what I heard. She looked up. What did you hear? I hesitated. The lie was already crumbling in my throat, she told me. You died. In a car crash. When you were 3. Samantha stared at me, stunned. A crash? Yeah. I even asked her about the photo in the album. She just said it was too painful to talk about. We sat in silence. The hum of the coffee shop, the clinking of spoons, the quiet laughter of strangers, it all felt wrong. Too normal. Finally, she spoke. So one of us was lied to. No, I said, staring into my untouched cup. We both were. There was pain in her eyes, but something else too, relief. We weren't crazy. We weren't forgotten. We were stolen from each other. When we finally stood to leave, she hugged me again, tighter this time. You have no idea how long I've waited for this, she whispered. I think I do, I whispered back, but in the pit of my stomach, something churned. Because finding her was just the beginning, the real questions were still waiting, and so were the lies hiding in my family's past. The next few days after meeting Samantha felt like living in a split-screen version of reality, half of me glowing from the joy of finally finding my sister, the other half twisted into knots. Something didn't fit. How could two people share the same blood, the same childhood years, and yet live two completely different truths? I needed answers. One night, after Mom had gone to bed, I found myself standing in the hallway, staring at the old cedar trunk she kept in the hallway closet. It had been there for years, smelling like dust and mothballs. She always told me it held nothing important. But as a kid, I remembered seeing her open it once, late at night, crying quietly into a stack of papers. Now I knew what I was looking for. And I wasn't leaving without it. I dragged it into the living room, heart pounding. My hands shook as I pried it open. Inside, old photo albums, expired insurance papers, birthday cards from people I didn't recognize. I was about to give up, until I spotted a faded blue folder tucked under a yellowed baby blanket. The label on the front read, Samantha, Legal. I held my breath and opened it. What I found made my stomach drop. The first document was a court order, dated 2001. It listed both my parents. Custody had been revoked. The reason, repeated reports of neglect, emotional abuse, and risk to child safety. Another page, typed, official, signed by a judge, declared that Samantha was to be placed with relatives in California until further notice. But the line that gutted me said, subject displays signs of extreme emotional distress. Removed from household after unconfirmed incident involving physical restraint. I covered my mouth, trying not to sob. There were other papers too, handwritten notes from what looked like a therapist. Describing Samantha as withdrawn, fearful, possibly traumatized. And then, one from our mom. Addressed to the court, she'd written, I cannot handle her anymore. She screams for hours. She lies. She hurts the dog. I'm afraid she'll hurt Eliza. Please. Just take her. I couldn't breathe. Was Samantha violent? Or just a scared child misread by overwhelmed parents? And if she was truly dangerous, why lie and say she died? I shoved the papers back into the folder, my thoughts spiraling. Mom had always seemed like the strong one. The protector. But this? This wasn't protection, this was abandonment dressed up as survival, and maybe. Just maybe. It was something worse. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying everything Samantha said. Everything Mom never did. Everything she buried, literally and emotionally, because the truth wasn't just hidden in some dusty folder, it was buried in every silence, every deflected question, every photo she never hung, and now, I was starting to dig. I waited until Saturday morning. Mom was in the kitchen, humming softly while scrambling eggs, like it was just another peaceful day in our quiet Phoenix home. I stood in the doorway, gripping that blue folder like it was about to explode in my hands. Mom, I said, my voice low. We need to talk. She glanced up, smile fading the moment she saw the folder. Her whole body stiffened, like someone flipped a switch. Where did you get that? She asked flatly. I found it in the cedar trunk, I said. The one you said had nothing important in it. She didn't answer right away. Just turned back to the stove and lowered the heat. I stepped closer. You lied to me. About Samantha. You said she died in a car crash. She didn't look at me. I did what I had to do. No, I snapped. You didn't. You gave her up. You wrote a letter to the court begging them to take her. You said she was dangerous, because she was, she said sharply, finally turning around. Her eyes were cold. Not tearful. Not remorseful. Just controlled. She wasn't like you, Eliza. She screamed for hours every night. Through things. She locked herself in the laundry room and tried to cut her own hair off with scissors. She bit me when I tried to stop her. I shook my head. She was a child. Scared. Maybe traumatized. And you never once told me the truth. You made me grieve a sister who was still breathing. Mom's voice dropped, steady as ever. I lied because I didn't want you to grow up afraid. You were so little, Eliza. You don't remember how bad it got. She remembers. I said. She remembers everything. That made her pause. She told me about being sent away. But she never knew why. Just that no one came for her. And now I find this. I lifted the folder slightly, and I don't know what to believe anymore. Mom's voice softened, but it didn't feel sincere. I did it to protect you. The words rang hollow. They weren't comforting. They were practiced. Rehearsed. Protect me from what? From my sister, from the truth, or from the guilt of what she did. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, she felt like a stranger. The woman who tucked me in, packed my lunches, taught me how to ride a bike. Was also the one who erased my sister and buried the truth under years of silence. I didn't say another word. I turned, walked back to my room, and closed the door, because I was beginning to realize something no child ever wants to admit. Sometimes, the monster isn't the one you were warned about. Sometimes, the monster raised you. The closer we got, the more I started to feel the cracks. Samantha and I texted constantly. We even spent weekends together, hiking, grabbing food, catching up on 2 decades we never had. From the outside, we looked like two sisters reunited by fate, but beneath the laughter, something was off. She refused to drive past our old neighborhood. Once, when I suggested we swing by for a look, she went quiet and changed the subject. I brushed it off at first. Phoenix could be full of hard memories. I understood that, but then there were the flinches, tiny ones, whenever I mentioned our dad. A name, a memory, even a joke. She'd tense up, blink fast, and fake a smile. I started to notice how she always insisted on meeting somewhere neutral. Never my house. Never near Mom. Every time I offered, she'd politely decline, saying she was too tired or not ready. One night, I pressed her. We were sitting in her apartment watching an old movie when I finally asked, "Do you remember anything about Dad?" She hesitated. Then shook her head. Not much. Just shadows. Yelling. Nothing clear. I could tell she was lying. Or at least hiding something. A few days later, I stopped by unannounced to drop off a care package. She had just gotten out of the shower, and while she changed in the other room, Her bag sat on the kitchen table. Half open, I didn't want to snoop, but curiosity is a dangerous thing. And I couldn't ignore the pull. Not when everything felt so unfinished, so fractured. Inside the bag, beneath a sketchpad and a zip hoodie, was a black USB stick, no label. Just there, tucked in a side pocket like it didn't matter. I hesitated. Then I slid it into my pocket, later that night. At home, I plugged it into my laptop, and what I saw will never leave me. There were photos, grainy, dimly lit. A mattress on a concrete floor. A small, windowless room. In one photo, a little girl sat in the corner, hugging her knees. Her hair was messy. Her face was Samantha's. Then there was a video, shaky. Low quality. The camera must have been hidden. The door creaked open. Light flooded in. A voice, our mother's, said coldly, "If you scream again, you'll stay in the monster's room all week." Then the door slammed shut. My skin went cold. My ears rang. This wasn't protection, this was prison, this was a child locked away, and Samantha had kept this all to herself. Why? Was she ashamed? Was she afraid I wouldn't believe her, or was she still protecting someone who never protected her? I closed the laptop and sat in the dark. The video burned into my brain. Whatever I thought I knew about my family, about Samantha, about myself, it had just shattered into 1,000 pieces, and now I had to face the truth. The silence we grew up with wasn't just hiding pain, it was hiding something unforgivable. I didn't sleep that night. The images from the video played on a loop in my head, the tiny room, the cracked concrete floor, the chipped paint on the walls. And Samantha, small and silent, curled up like she knew that crying only made things worse, but it was the voice that haunted me, our mother's voice, not screaming. Not raging. Just cold. Detached. You want to act like a monster? Fine. You'll live like one. Click, lock, silence. I sat on my bed, staring at the dark screen long after the footage ended. I kept waiting for a wave of disbelief to hit me, to convince myself it wasn't real. That it was staged. Old. Misunderstood, but it wasn't, it was a memory caught on camera. One Samantha had lived through. One mom had forced her to relive over and over. While I was too young, too protected, or too blind to notice, I thought back to the nights Mom would say, "Don't go near the garage, sweetie. Your sister's sleeping." Or when I asked about the locked door down the hallway and she told me it was just for storage. It wasn't a storage room, it was a cell. All those years I thought she was grieving. She was hiding. The next morning, I called in sick to work and sat in my car outside Samantha's apartment. I didn't text. I didn't knock. I just waited. She stepped out around 10. Looking surprised but not angry. "I need to show you something," I said quietly. We didn't talk in the elevator. Or in her living room. I just handed her the USB. Her hands trembled as she plugged it in. Her eyes stayed dry, but her jaw tightened the moment the video started. She watched it all. And when it ended, she looked at me, not with anger, but with an ache I can't describe. "I kept it," she whispered, "in case I ever had to prove I wasn't crazy." "You were never crazy," I said. "You were a child." Samantha shook her head. "They made me believe I was the problem. That I was broken. But I wasn't. I was just inconvenient." That word, inconvenient, not dangerous. Not violent, just inconvenient to the life Mom wanted to keep perfect on the outside. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive straight to our childhood home and rip that cedar trunk apart in front of her. But instead, I asked the question that had been sitting heavy on my chest, "Why didn't you tell me?" Samantha looked down. "Because I didn't want to lose you, too." That broke me. I crossed the room and hugged her like the years apart had never happened, because the truth was, I hadn't just found my sister, I'd found the only other person who knew the full weight of our family's silence, and now it was time to make sure the world heard it. Phoenix was in one of those dry summer spells where even the breeze felt like fire. I waited until just after noon to confront her, when the house would be quiet and the heat would slow everything down. Mom was in the living room folding laundry, her face calm as always, her routine untouched by the storm I was about to bring. I sat across from her. Pressed record on my phone. Left it face down on the coffee table. I know everything, I said. She didn't look up. I saw the video. I saw what you did to Samantha. Her hands paused mid-fold. Then she picked up a towel and kept going. You had no right to go through her things. That's your concern? I snapped. Not that you locked a child in a windowless room? That you called her a monster and left her there? Mom finally looked at me, her eyes flat, unreadable. She was out of control. You weren't there. You didn't hear the screaming. The lies. The threats. She was 5, Mom. 5. She threatened to kill the dog, Eliza. She tried to light her blanket on fire. I was alone. Your father didn't help. The system didn't help. So I did what I had to do. By locking her away? I could feel my voice rising. By throwing her out and telling me she died? She was going to destroy you, she said coolly. I chose you. That line cracked something inside me. You didn't choose me, I said. You lied to me. You raised me in a house of silence and secrets and called it love. I reached for my phone, stopped the recording, and stood. My hands were shaking, but I held my ground. I'm giving this to Samantha, I said. And then we're taking it further. You don't get to bury this anymore. Mom didn't move. Didn't plead. Just watched me like I was a stranger walking out of her life. You think anyone will believe her? She said. After all these years? I do, I said. And soon. Others will too. Samantha listened to the recording with her eyes closed. Her face didn't change. When it ended, she opened her eyes and nodded. She hasn't changed at all, she said softly. No, I agreed. But we have. We spent the rest of the evening making a plan, reaching out to a therapist she trusted, finding a lawyer who handled historical abuse cases, and preparing a timeline. But this wasn't about vengeance, it was about visibility, about truth. We weren't just confronting our mother. We were confronting a pattern, a legacy of silence that ended with us, and this time, we had proof. Samantha didn't speak much the night before we went live. She sat on the edge of her couch, phone in hand, fingers hovering over the screen. Her breath was steady, but her eyes, those eyes carried decades of fear, confusion, and something else I hadn't seen before, resolve. This isn't just for me, she said. It's for anyone who was silenced and made to feel crazy for telling the truth. I nodded. Then let's make sure they hear you. We uploaded the video at exactly 8 a.m. It started with Samantha's face, calm, direct, unshaken. She introduced herself, shared the lie she had lived with for 21 years, and then she played the video. No dramatics. No background music. Just facts. Her story. And the evidence. By noon, it had over 10,000 views. By sunset, it was on the front page of Reddit and being reshared on Twitter and TikTok by major accounts. By the next morning, Phoenix's biggest local news station called asking for an interview. We didn't say yes right away. Samantha needed to feel in control. But when she finally agreed, she looked directly into the camera and said, "My mother was a respected nurse in this community. She saved lives in daylight and broke one in the dark." The interview aired that evening. And the backlash was immediate. The hospital where Mom worked released a public statement saying she had been terminated effective immediately. The state nursing board announced a pending investigation, but that wasn't the part that stunned me, it was the neighbors. People from our old street began commenting and messaging Samantha, telling stories of things they had seen or heard and ignored. The strange screams. The padlocked doors. The excuse that Samantha was sick or being punished. One woman even confessed she once called Child Protective Services but never followed up because Dana seemed like such a good mom. The silence that had protected Mom for so long had finally cracked. And through it, Samantha's voice echoed, "We didn't post out of spite, we posted because this time we weren't going to be quiet." Mom tried to defend herself at first. A weak Facebook post claiming the video was taken out of context and that mental illness was involved. But no one bought it. Not anymore. She deleted her account within 48 hours. For years, she hid behind a reputation, a title, a uniform, a tidy front lawn. Now, the truth stood bare, and the world believed Samantha, not because the evidence was shocking, but because her strength was undeniable. That night, as we sat on the roof of her apartment watching the Phoenix sky burn orange, Samantha turned to me and said, "I don't want revenge anymore." I nodded. "We already got something better." She smiled. A voice. And in that moment, with the city buzzing below us, I realized this wasn't the end of the story, it was the beginning of one we finally got to write ourselves. A year later, the sun still rose just as hot over Phoenix, but everything else had changed. Samantha and I moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Tempe. Nothing fancy, worn hardwood floors, mismatched furniture, but it was ours. It smelled like lavender and fresh paint, and for the first time, I didn't flinch when I heard silence, because this silence felt safe. Samantha finally opened her tattoo studio. A dream she once thought she'd never be allowed to have. It was small, just 2 chairs, a wall of framed flash art, and a bright neon sign in the window that read, "Ink Identity." I helped her set it up. Hung every frame. Painted the walls. She asked me to design the logo, a phoenix rising from a broken chain. Fitting, for what we'd been through. She inked the same design on her ribs the day the studio opened. "I survived the fire," she said. "Now I carry it." As for me, I finally launched my mobile detailing business. It started slow, just a few regulars and weekend appointments. But something about restoring what was worn, polishing what had been neglected. It felt healing. Like I was rebuilding more than just cars. Sometimes, Samantha would ride with me. We'd listen to music, talk about nothing, or sit in comfortable silence as we drove past the city that raised and nearly ruined us. Mom disappeared from our lives after the story went public. She sold the house and left Phoenix. No apology. No final word. Just vanished. And somehow, that was enough. We didn't need her acknowledgement to move forward. The truth had already set us free. One night, as we sat on the balcony sipping iced tea, Samantha turned to me and asked, "Do you think we'd still be close if none of that had happened? If we grew up together?" I thought about that, about shared birthdays, inside jokes, maybe fighting over clothes and music. A life that never happened. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I do know we're here now. And that matters more." She nodded. "We got to choose each other this time." And that's when it hit me, family isn't just blood or DNA. It's not who shares your last name or who sat at your dinner table growing up. Family is who shows up after the wreckage, who helps you pick up the pieces, who sees the worst of your past and still chooses to stand beside you. Samantha and I didn't rewrite our childhood, we didn't erase the pain, but we built something new from the ashes. Something honest. Something strong. And every time someone walks into her shop, or I scrub a car clean under the desert sun, I'm reminded, this is our story now, we lived it, we claimed it, and no one gets to take it from us again.